Hey guys, today I want to cover a topic that I'm pretty familiar with, which is studying for certifications. Not necessarily vendor specific, right? This topic, or rather this video, is going to cover primarily Cisco related certs because I'm going to cover some of the tools that you have available. But similar concepts are available for non-Cisco related certifications, Juniper, Brocade, whatever you want to go for. If Brocade actually has certifications, I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I've just dealt with some of their hardware. So, first thing I got up here is a Google image search for home labs. And there's some pretty cool ones out there. I have one put together at where I'm at, where I can kind of remote in and get to various servers. And I've got an ESX server running some VMs. I have couple of networking devices for the security component, and then a couple other features and services available for it. But you can see some people really put some money and some time into building these things. I mean, I can see in the background of this one there's some stacked, looks like routers, and then plenty of Cisco phones out here on the table. You can get some pretty cheap ones. In one of the other videos I showed you how to reset them. If you get a 7940 online, it's dirt cheap these days, and it's going to do most of what you need to do in order for studying for some voice type material. Some of these, I can already tell how expensive some of these setups are, though. You really don't need to spend that much money. If you just get a couple of devices, if you want actual hardware devices, then it should get the job done for you. Maybe a router and a switch, or a couple. You can find them pretty cheap online in lots on eBay and a couple other places. So, all right. Moving on, though, this topic, or this video, primarily is about some of the software solutions that you have for your certification study, and at least from the Cisco standpoint, primarily. Again, there's other alternatives out there for the other vendors. I'm going to cover briefly the first two, and then I'm going to jump into the third one. So we're going to start with Cisco Packet Tracer, move on to GNS3, and move on to Cisco's VIRL. And I'll touch on them all when I get to each one. But essentially, these are three different tools that you can use to virtualize a network infrastructure for your own home studying purposes for certifications. It's good if you're not currently employed in the industry, or perhaps you're employed but you're not actively using hands-on into some of the various fields you're trying to study for. So I'm going to try and keep this video shorter than the ones in the past. I have a tendency to ramble on, and I know it's an issue, and I'm trying to cut down on that. So jumping right into it. Candidate number one is Cisco Packet Tracer. This is the interface for Cisco Packet Tracer. It is available from Cisco. Typically, you have to be a Net Academy student, or whatever they're calling it these days, which you can get enrolled in through educational providers, as well as sometimes I think you can go in through an employer, depending on the partnership deal and whatnot. That is the official means to acquire Cisco Packet Tracer. So when you have Packet Tracer from Cisco, which you can download from Net Academy, as I said, you open up this interface here, and you can essentially start dragging out various devices that you want to set up. And they have kind of a pre-built list here of devices that are available: 2811, 2901, 2911. And what you can do, if you're not familiar, since they're all going to show as the same icon for you, is you can go to Google image search, and you can search for say 2811, and it kind of helps to put in perspective what the actual equipment is that you're simulating working on. At least for me, I know that these numbers on the screen don't really, it's not that big of a difference. But when you start seeing the actual different hardware you are simulating, it's kind of cool, because you know that the equivalent real-world hardware you're going to be able to be a little more familiar with after you deal with these. So they have some switches available as well. And weirdly enough, although I'll touch on it when we get to the GNS3 edition, weirdly enough, Packet Tracer does almost the best job out of switching. And I say that because the main difference between Packet Tracer and the other two that we're going to cover, which is GNS3 and Cisco VIRL, is Packet Tracer is a simulator and not an emulator. What I mean by that is Cisco Packet Tracer has pre-compiled, pre-configured versions of Cisco iOS. It's not a real iOS binary file that's extracting and loading into the devices here. So there are some there's some things that are missing from the functionality, from your ability within the iOS. And in fact, what I'll do, is not delete that. What I'll actually do is go ahead and get into one of these devices here. And when you open up one of them, once you have them out on the screen, you can add line cards to them. So all these different modules over here on the side, and it may vary depending on the particular piece of hardware that you're messing with. But for example, if I want a HWIC 4 Ethernet switch port module, just pop that in, and the power's on. So I can't do that. Of course, I should have known better. But you pop it in like that, turn the power back on. There's a little simulated power button here. This kind of shows you a picture, kind of like I was talking about Google image searching. This shows you kind of what the device that you're dealing with is going to look like to an extent. Obviously, this is just a little vector graphic here. But so with the power turned back on, obviously we can't add any more modules, but we got the 4-port Ethernet switch module there. There's some, in Packet Tracer they have the ability to do some general settings kind of in a graphical user interface where you can go in and set various settings on the different interfaces and VLAN database and global settings, change the host name, all that. What it's going to do is down below, it'll show you the equivalent iOS commands. It's going to send whatever changes you try and make as the equivalent iOS commands, as it says, that you would actually enter yourself in the iOS. So if you're really new, I should say, to Cisco equipment, this is a good way to kind of see what commands do what when you're in here changing things, because you're going to understand better from this graphical interface what you're doing, and then you can see the command line based commands that you would use in order to do the same thing. Jumping over to the CLI, this is the real bread and butter of any simulator or emulator. You can go ahead and start making configuration changes as you would with real world hardware. So do command does function as intended from within configuration mode, because obviously you cannot do a show IPnt brief in config T. It's going to tell you there's an error. So if you throw a do in front of anything when you're in configuration mode, it's going to go ahead and execute it as it should when you were not in configuration mode. So yeah, you can just kind of go into int faz0/0, give an IP address, and do anything that you would. Now, when I say do anything, there are some caveats. And going back to this being a simulator, for example, if you want to do a show run, it's going to go ahead and show you the whole running config. You can see how fast it loads, though, and any of you who have dealt with real equipment know that things don't normally work that fast. It's got to kind of build the running config, and you're going to see it come up one at a time. So that just kind of goes to prove that the simulator, everything's kind of preset for you. It's almost like the simulators that they use on their exams. It's obviously not a real iOS file because it's within their software, so this is kind of along the same lines. So with that, what I wanted to show you was kind of some of the disabilities is, for example, if I do a show run faz0/0, int faz0/0, the one we just configured, you can see that that's not even an option, right? And you should be able to isolate interfaces like this and show just that output from the running config. Same thing for show run include. Include really anything. I'll just type interface. That should give us a whole bunch of lines. You cannot pipe. Okay, so there's a lot of things that you would normally want to do. Maybe if you're showing a MAC address table, this is a router. That's a bad example. Show MAC address table, and then you normally would be able to pipe and include a certain MAC, right? The last 4 of a MAC, F4, Charlie, Bravo, whatever. You're not gonna be able to do that. It's gonna stop you with the context help right after the initial show command. So this goes back to it being a simulator. Like I said, there are some limitations within that aspect. With devices, you can cable them relatively simply by just going over and grabbing the connection tool down here on the bottom side. And you can automatically choose connection type, or if you know what you're going for, straight through versus crossover. Crossover for like devices, for example. They've got a fiber connector, phone coaxial, serial DC. This is one of the newer versions of Packet Tracer. They didn't used to have all these features in here. There's some other neat things that they've added over the years here in the Packet Tracer. It never used to be this intricate, but you can add in some wireless devices, custom-made devices, multi-user connections, WAN emulations, I believe you can actually tie this into your real network, kind of like you can with GNS3 using, I don't remember if it's the WAN emulation or the multi-user. I haven't done it in quite a while. Cool thing about, two cool things that I really like about Packet Tracer. One I already covered, and it's that the switches, which you can see over here, a picture of the switch you're dealing with. The switches, even though they are simulated, okay. Again, there's some commands that are just missing functionality, but switching is done relatively better than some of the emulators because of their lack of ability to do the layer 2 switching. They're mostly primarily focused on the routing. So that's one of the cool things that I like. The second thing is that when you put workstations in here, they're completely simulated workstations, right? You don't have to load up any virtual OSs, which you're probably not sure what that's all about, or you may be. I'll cover that more in the next example, the next software you can use. But with these computers that are emulated, you can swap out modules like you could with the router, some various expansion cards that you'd put onto an actual PC. All the functionality right here is outstanding for something that is a true simulation. They used to only have like ping, traceroute, and like IP config. All right, but now they have. I mean, I'm not even sure honestly why you need a text editor. I'm not sure. I guess you can save files locally on these machines. Maybe you can access them with or TFTP. I haven't used a lot of the functionality, to be completely honest with you. Typically, I go in and change the IP configuration over to DHCP if I've got a pool. But the fact that they have a Cisco IP communicator phone, I mean, look at this thing. This is legit. And yeah, obviously I don't have a call manager up and running here, but so I'm not gonna be able. I don't really know what I'm capable of doing with this thing, but I mean, obviously it's a soft phone, so there'd be some VoIP functionality. But just the fact that there's so many different things that you can do with these computers, and honestly, I'm learning more just as I go through it. But web browse to various servers, etc. It's cool. It's cool to be able to set up your own topology. It's also not very resource intensive, unlike the next two that I'm going to cover. They get a lot more heavy on resource utilization. You can set up polygon shapes, various. You can draw little things on the map, and annotate things, set up your topology however you want. You can simulate. You can do simulations of packets being sent from one device to another. Change the background to a graphic. You can set up problems and kind of lock down these different solutions. I don't know if you can do it with this Packet Tracer, but I'm sure you've seen the labs before. There's a different version of Packet Tracer, I believe, the Teacher Edition, where you can actually set up simulations. So, again, as a simulator goes, with limited functionality as far as the iOS, because obviously it's not a full-blown iOS. There's some components that you may be used to that you're not able to do. It does pretty good job. All right, so Packet Tracer, if you're studying, say, for your CCNA, CCENT, maybe one of the CCNA tracks. Although security, you're going to need firewalls, and I don't think this bad boy's got firewalls in here. I'll have to get back to you on that one. Voice, you're going to need call manager. So I guess primarily your route and switch. This is going to get you there. It's going to get the job done. So leaving Cisco Packet Tracer behind, again, a very good option for you for studying for certifications. We're going to move on to option number 2, which is this console window. Just kidding. It is GNS3. Now, GNS3, that console window you saw, is actually the server for it. GNS3 is now in the official release, the 1.0 release. And it's come a long way-ish. It is very similar to how it was before the actual official release. You have your devices over here, kind of like you had in the bottom of Cisco Packet Tracer. You can switch over. I'll talk about switches in a second. So they have got a slew of various routers that are supported. These are the only routers that are going to be supported. Now, with GNS3, and I'm not going to go in there because it's going to expose the directory, but if you go to preferences, you can actually import your iOS files. The biggest thing about GNS3 versus Packet Tracer is it doesn't work out of the box. You need to import your own iOS binary files into it. Okay, these are the real files you would put on a Cisco hardware chassis router. So with that being said, they are emulated rather than simulated, which I touched on a couple times back during the Packet Tracer demo. So with them being emulated, you're dealing with real iOS files that are going to go ahead and uncompress and load the slow way that they usually do, if you're familiar. But you're also going to get full functionality. You can do piped piped show commands where you can include, exclude, section out various things. I'll touch on workstations first. They have the ability to include VirtualBox VMs, so you can actually attach your different VMs into GNS3, and that's cool because you'll have like a real operating system. It's not a simulated one like on the other, packet tracer. Again, more resource intensive. There is kind of like a standby utilization feature that you can set to dictate how much system resources this thing will take up. But you're going to have full functionality of an actual operating system, obviously, and then you can connect it to your switches, or rather your routers, however you want. You can see in the topology I have here, I have switch icons. You can do this on Packet Tracer too as well, but you basically can change the symbol to whatever you want. In reality, all these devices that you're seeing, if I close this for a second, are routers. Alright, so their host name R2, R3 should give it away, but these are all like 2691. 2691. Apparently, when I built this topology for a video that I'm not sure if I've done yet or not, I just picked that 2691 because it was working well for me. You may have issues with certain iOS versions, just something that you're going to need to kind of play with. Okay, with regards to switching, I'm not sure that I'm up to date on the latest of what GNS3 has made available, but their biggest thing, I think, with the 1.0 release is switching via IOU devices. They had these kind of dumb switches and various things before where you can do minimal configuration and you're not actually dumped off into an iOS for them. You don't actually need a binary for them. The IOU device, what it lets you do is use this IOU operating system, the switching platform from Cisco. Problem with the IOU device is it was never officially released, from my understanding, from Cisco internally to the public. How it got out, well, everything leaks these days. So the methods to acquire an IOU operating system are kind of a bit shady. So I haven't actually implemented an IOU switch successfully within my topologies or this GNS3 platform. What I can say is apparently it does work from what I've heard and read online, and it works decently well. Now, I don't know if they're going to go... I have a feeling now that Cisco just released their own, what I like to call GNS3 killer, if you will, although they do have their own various differences, pros and cons. I don't think there's going to be a huge partnership between GNS3 and Cisco to get Cisco to release some sort of switching platform to GNS3. Now, it's hard to say, I don't know, because Cisco literally just released, actually not even today, I think it's tomorrow, released the switching iOS file for their own platform, the VIRL platform, which we're going to cover next. So they may very well dump off to GNS3. I know that there's been some talks in the past between the GNS3 development team, which I think is Canadian-based, and the Cisco internal development team. And there's been some shaking of hands because obviously GNS3 is a very good tool for people who are trying to study for certifications. So you can connect devices together on their ports. I'm switching over to functionality because I think we pretty much covered all the main devices you can put in here. Yeah, so I'm going to close that. You can connect devices together on their various ports. When you go to slap a new connector tool on, it'll let you pick whichever interface that you want, and then you can connect it to another device, etc., and then obviously go into those devices and configure them. You need to start the actual simulation, or rather the devices. I shouldn't say simulation with regards to anything to GNS3 because other than the fact it's not real hardware, it does use real binary files and loads everything, right? So this may kind of bog down the computer. I'm hoping the audio doesn't cut out. There's a couple of devices here. In fact, I think what I'll do, just for shits and giggles here, is I'm going to kill off a couple of these because I started it a few minutes ago and it was struggling. Only because I have so many things running right now. It's kind of bogging down this tiny little device that I'm running all this on. So I went ahead and hit start on the device, and you can see that I already had this image uncompiled, so it saved a lot of time with booting it up. But you can see that it's kind of going through a normal process like a Cisco iOS device would. Again, normally it would take a little while to uncompress. There'd be a little more to it, but it's definitely more emulated than the Cisco Packet Tracer. So once you're actually in a device, again, you have your show run. You can see how this one let me go ahead and get this back on the screen for you there. But you can see, I'll do it again real quick. You can see how it has to build the configuration. This is much more real world example of what you're going to see with actual hardware. You can also do things now like show run int fast10. This is what I was talking about on the last one of not being able to do, as well as you can do show run, and you're not limited to the running config with these piped commands, but it's just the easiest for me to show an example of. So if I should do show run include trunk, because I see that in a line right up here, it's going to search the whole running config and it's going to pull any lines in that just have the word trunk. I can also obviously begin at trunk, and it's going to start at trunk. It's going to show a switch port mode trunk, etc. Whatever's after that in the configuration. So the ability to use the pipe is useful, like I said. So if you do show MAC address, no, again, this is a router. Sorry, I'm so used to working on switches with this. Show MAC address table. Okay, we have a whopping 1. But if you were to do that on a huge MAC address table of a production network, and you wanted to include a certain MAC address, obviously you can do that and find it a lot easier. See what port or VLAN it's on. So the major benefit to using GNS3 is obviously that you're running with full-blown iOS. You're not going to run into any weird quirks, anything that's unsupported. Again, GNS3 is developed by a third party. Throw a little plug in here of their about. This is the early release 1.0 beta 1. This is actually not the appropriate release I should be using, because this is from their Kickstarter back when they're about to release it, and they actually have released it since then. So I may be a little bit behind on some of the functionality, but I think I'm pretty close. Again, you can annotate it. As you see, I've got some various markings on this one here, and just to give you a quick run through, if you want to pause or whatever and check out the various menus, you can add pictures. It's really comparable in overall functionality. It's just that it's more real world than Packet Tracer. I'm going to move on at this point because the video is probably already too damn long. It's too damn long. So as I stall to figure out where I want to go next, let's jump back over here for a second. Let's go here. Okay. When you purchase, and I say purchase, this is let me cover this. First two software solutions we just covered, Packet Tracer, GNS3, free, completely free, unless you supported their Kickstarter, but that was voluntary. VIRL, on the other hand, which is Cisco's other product other than Packet Tracer. VIRL is their emulator, and it's a lot more real than I can't think of a better term, but essentially, yeah, you're dealing with emulated iOS platforms rather than the simulations. And you probably heard me say that 20 times. You tell me shut up, but you know, it's okay. So anywho, so once you purchase this solution, because it is the only commercial solution out of the 3 that I'm listing today, and these are probably the biggest players when it comes to simulating or emulating network topologies for you to study. Once you purchase the platform, Cisco's going to give you 2 things. They're going to give you a license file, and that comes into play later, and they're going to then send you a link to the download file, and you need a CCO account, which is the Cisco login to their website, to download it. Once you download it, you can go ahead and jump over to what I've got here up on the screen, which is essentially their install instructions. It's going to run you through. There's a couple different methods that you can use to download it. I chose particularly the ESXi OVA file. And what that is basically a fully compiled VM operating system. So I can just import that right into vSphere or my ESXi server, and I can go ahead and boot it right up. I'll show you the operating system in a second, but basically going through the install command or instructions here, if you actually get it yourself, it kind of tells you how to download it, how to configure the virtual networks, how to deploy the OVA for ESXi. This is actually the ESX instructions. So they have different instructions if you get an actual iOS, if you want to put it on a full server instead of just virtualizing it. I will say that it's kind of resource intensive. They cover, or if you Google, you can find where they cover what you need as far as resources, RAM, processors, etc. It's compared to GNS3 and Packet Tracer, it makes them look like lightweight. So there's a web interface for you to access some of the various things that. Also, if you look around, for example, this Ethan Banks on networking, there's a couple people who have done the install, and they give you the step-by-step of things that they found that gave them a little bit of trouble, right? So, for example, this guy thin provisioned on his ESX server instead of thick provision. So thin provisioning is where it kind of builds up the size of the disk as it grows, whereas thick provisioning basically will cut out a section of your disk space immediately, and that whole section is there no longer able to be used by other OSs. So if you have a bunch of thin provision OSs, as they grow, they can obviously you can give them all more space than you actually have on your device or on your hard drives, because they can grow into it, but then you can run into issues down the road with that. So if it's just a home lab, just kind of pay attention to what you got for storage. Anyway, so there's various people that have given you little tips and tricks there. Jumping over to the actual VIRL platform itself, I'm going to go ahead and get into my ESX server, VIRL, and I'm going to pop it open in a virtual machine console. We're going to be running with rather limited room here as far as resolution goes, so just bear with me on that. I've got the resolution higher than I should because normally I can full screen it, but here you have it when you first boot it up. All right, all this is really is a I believe it's actually Ubuntu based, or Ubuntu, whatever your preferred choice is. It is a Linux distro that they've slapped their software on top of, so that's kind of cool. But with that being said, they once you get it booted up, you set up your network connections, you go to the web interface, and you can log into this, I forget what they call it, but basically you can go in there, and what you have to do in there is that key that they sent you that I mentioned earlier and then completely dropped off about. You have to go in there and go ahead and put the contents in, etc., link up your NTP, make sure your time is on sync, because it reaches out to Cisco mothership servers and activates your software, and if you don't activate it, then it's not really yours, and so you're going to have issues with functionality. I'm sure somebody will break that, but if you want to get it the legit way, you got to go through Cisco. So once you get it activated and everything's happy, which can be a bit of a pain, just follow the instructions and pray that it doesn't give you hell. Then there is this software application called VM Maestro. Actually, I believe is the correct pronunciation. I'm going to open it up. This thing is going to run and act a little slow, and in fact, let me go ahead and kill off just to save any resources. So I don't even know if this thing decided to play nice and open here. Yeah, it's slowly coming up. So VM Maestro is basically the software platform that you're going to use to design and run these simulations. So there is a server backend to this one, unlike the other two that we've covered already. So as I said, it's a little heftier, but it does have a client front end that is kind of comparable to the other two. I'm only going to briefly cover functionality here because, to be completely honest with you, I'm still learning myself. There is one thing I'll say while this thing boots up, and just keep in mind that this is running kind of slow because I've got a couple other servers running, and I think I'm overtaxing my physical box that ESX is installed on. So yours will probably run a little better if you plan ahead, unlike I did. But what I will say is that there is a lot to VIRL, a lot more than the other two. Okay, and I haven't learned all of it by any means yet. The other thing is that they just released layer 2, or they are tomorrow, or you can download it now or something. You can upgrade it if you already have VIRL. You can upgrade your install, but they're releasing layer 2 switching support as an actual iOS file. Yeah, I got you. Tried to open twice. So what that means for you is you have an actual emulated switching platform. So compared to the simulated ones on Packet Tracer, which don't do too bad of a job, the IOU files on GNS3, which honestly I don't really know how to get an IOU file still. I mean, I do, but I don't. So, and then you have VIRL. So VIRL bringing you an opportunity to get into some more switching concepts, which in CCNP, obviously, you know, you have a whole test and track dedicated to switching of your 3 exams that you have to take. So it's good to get hands-on with some of the switching technologies in a real environment. And compared to buying hardware, especially decent hardware, the licensing for VIRL, I think there's a student edition if you are enrolled or have your own student email address, and then there's a personal use edition. They're okay for price, especially if you're just using them for studying for certifications and you've got a goal to use them for, and then you maybe won't need them or you'll use them for more and then be done. It's okay. The problem I have with it is that they're yearly based subscriptions. So after a year is up, I guess from what I understand, you no longer have access to this. So that's a bit of an issue because most certifications last 30 years. So if you go to study again down the road, obviously ideally you still know most of the material by then and you're progressing your career. Either way, though, after a year, you're forking up more cash to Cisco, which I'm sure they don't already have enough cash as it is. So as we feed that machine. So let's go ahead and cover some of the functionality of VIRL. Up in the upper right here, and you're going to have to excuse me, I'm going to have to kind of scroll us around in this operating system because of the resolution, but you've got design and simulation mode. If I go back over to design mode, it's going to change what we have over on the left side whenever it switches over. So you can see now that we've got our actual devices. A lot of what you see on this interface can be modularly moved around. Okay, you can put these different windows views, like for example the properties down here, you can move them over to the left, to the right, whatever. Your console windows when you're in simulation, you can move them wherever you want. You can expand them, you can minimize them, you can close them, whatever you want to do. When you go to window up top and go to show view, and I believe that these actually change when you switch over to simulation view. A lot of the menus and a lot of the things around the screen are going to change between design and simulation, even between just not clicking on a device versus clicking on a device and having it selected. So there's a lot of things that are going to be fluidly moving you have to kind of keep in mind. But if you go to show view and bring up a new view, it'll show up and then you can move it around wherever you want. So for nodes, devices, the bread and butter of what these things actually are designed to do, all three of them, you've got your iOS V, which is essentially your Cisco iOS. All right, this is your router platform. The V, I'm not 100% sure what it stands for. Do a quick Google. I should have done it beforehand, but essentially when these V iOS files boot up, they say like they're designed for lab study use. Cisco doesn't actually support these, so you can't just slap them on your actual. If you rip them out of here somehow, you can't slap them on your actual equipment and expect to get any TAC support. They've got the iOS XR, they've got the CSR 1000, and they've got the NXOS. So comparative to the other two platforms, you can see already that you've got a massive increase in what you're able to study for and work with. Okay, in all the other ones, you're pretty much dealing strictly with your vanilla iOS image. But the ability to use the XR, CSR 1000, and the NX operating systems for different kinds of devices are it's very beneficial for your studying. Okay, maybe not for your generic route and switch, but once you start going into maybe data center or some of the various other tracks, it's going to be beneficial. Unmanaged switch, I haven't used this yet. I think it's going to be comparable to your packet tracer edition. Like I said, I haven't updated mine yet, but they are releasing layer 2 switching in an iOS format, so that is full-blown emulated layer 2 switching, which is cool. I don't know if it's going to be layer 3 capable switches or you can do routing and all that good stuff. We'll have to find out. I'll try and post an update. Server, I haven't actually used one of these yet either. Not 100% sure of what it's capable of. I don't know if it's simulated or if you have to tie it in. I'm trying to think if I actually want to put one out here because of how slow this thing is going to be running for me. But while that does its sweet happy thing, maybe, you can connect devices together. Okay. That actually did not do what we wanted it to do. Again, I'm running on rather limited resources because of my setup here. Okay, well, this whole thing's going pretty well so far. Yeah, botch it. I'm just going to go back to the select tool. We're just going to roll with what we got here. So, but I'm sure the server has just outstanding functionality if I would be able to show it to you guys. But in reality, this VM Maestro, you can install it on another workstation and connect to your server. Obviously, the fact I'm running it on the server in the first place is already probably bad practice. It's going to run faster on a computer with dedicated processing power for the actual client application. With that being said, what else can we move on to here? They've got a couple sample topologies. I started up the 2-node one because it's kind of less resource intensive, but if I could show you here, they have like a core network which has probably 8 to 10 devices on there, and then whatever's titled sample topology with problem. Alright, so I guess you can set up problems in this like you can in Packet Tracer. GNS3, I don't remember. I would assume you can, but basically you can set up issues that you can send to a friend to work through for studying or whatever. Let's see. If you hear me stalling a lot during this one, it's because, to be completely honest, I've tinkered around with this a little bit so far, but I haven't completely dove into it because I just acquired it. I had to wait for the download and everything to come from Cisco, and then I had to fight installing it. Let's switch over to simulation mode and kind of touch on a couple things, and we'll wrap it up here with some final thoughts. So, with simulation mode, you can see your devices over here, see what's active and powered on. You have to start your simulation up here, launch it prior to going into simulation mode, or you won't be able to do much with them. You can pick a device that's active on your topology, and you can go into telnet into its console port. You can SSH if you have it set up. Before I get into there and show you that what you're probably already expecting to see, which is basically an iOS command line, they have the ability when you're doing the design to push out automatic configs to these things. So you can tell it, maybe with this iOS V1, this device here, I want to set up EIGRP with a certain autonomous system number and certain various parameters to it. Maybe you want, I should switch back over and show you. I don't remember 100% where it's at, so I'm not going to waste the time. But basically, you can push automatic generated configs to all these devices if you're just trying to get a simulation up and running really quick with some things already configured, right? So not just your generic empty configuration. But jumping into the console port here. I'm sure this will be an exciting one for you. You've probably never seen this before in your life. Basically, it's going to place you at a simulated. What did I pick? Did I pick Telnet? Oh boy, ew boy. I really wish I had dedicated more resources. I gave it what it asked for during install, but I think that the problem is that I have too many thin provision devices, and they're all eating up each other's RAM. I don't think disk space is as much of an issue. So there you go. We are in. Right, and I apologize. We are scrolling. There you go. Show run. Actually show, I don't know, IPM brief. What do we have? What in the hell was that? Traceback. Task is running for sys CPU hog. Ha! Okay. So I definitely have some issues going on. But anyway, show run int G00. So you can see again full-blown operating system comparative to the packet tracer example. Out-of-band management. I did not set this up, so this is an example of something they already had configured on this. So that's kind of cool. It may have done that with the config generator. Anyway, this is your vanilla iOS. Again, there are the NXOS and a couple other options for you to get up and running. And don't be fooled by how slow mine's operating. Again, that's some of my own setup. So if you dedicate this to a physical box, or if you give it basically a lot of resources within your ESX server, or if you just don't have a shitty server like I do, go figure, then it'll actually run relatively smoothly. And I've run Maestro on another operating system that helps speed it up a little bit too, so you're not running on this Linux node. You can download it from the web interface when you're at another device, as long as you can get to the server. And that's about all I've got to show you. I've seen some sweet things online from their preview videos that I'm not sure how to show you, to be completely honest, as I'm still learning myself. Like the ability to show like a OSPF or EIGRP topology in like a visual format where it shows the different adjacencies kind of visually for you. I'd love to get to that point, but as of right now, I'm still learning myself. Once I learn the interface, networking is networking. Obviously, we'll be able to configure everything up, get it run smooth. But that's it. That's all I got for you. So, quick recap. Cisco Packet Tracer. It's going to be a good entry-level CCNT, CCNA simulation. A little bit of lack of functionality, but there's some cool features with the server simulators, and the switching doesn't do too bad of a job. GNS3. This is your free solution for an emulating platform for Cisco operating systems. There is full functionality with regards to the iOS, however, limited functionality with regards to switching. You can throw a like 16-port switching module in a router. I forgot to say that earlier, and that does a pretty good job covering your switching needs for assigning, access VLAN ports, etc. But obviously, it's not a true switch. So, regardless of the switching holdbacks, there may be something new out there for GNS3 that I'm just not tracking. So feel free to leave a comment if you know that. And lastly, Cisco VIRL, their latest moneymaker with the studying and network simulation platforms. And this is obviously, in my opinion, other than the whole licensing issue, which it's their software, I can't say too much about it. I didn't make it myself, or I'd be probably not making videos for YouTube. Other than the licensing, I'll say that it's when it's not running as slow as the one you're seeing me show you is running, it seems to be a very good platform. The fact that you can do other operating systems outside of the vanilla iOS, the fact that they come stock into the software so you don't have to acquire them, rather get them from your CCO account, and just things that I haven't even covered for you, like you can multiplex all of these console ports, so you can essentially send the same command to every console window at the same time, which if you haven't found a reason for it yet, don't worry, you will in your career, to send at least one command to every device that you've got connected. Just things like that are kind of going to put this one above and beyond, and the fact that Cisco's development team is going to keep putting time and effort into this one, really hoping they dump the licensing down the road and open source this bad boy. It's obviously more designed towards your CCNP, CCIE level studies. Probably, honestly, on the CCIE level, GNS3 is going to get you most of the way on CCNP. Other than the tracks, for the tracks, you're going to need to probably get hardware, firewall, call manager server, etc. Yeah, these are three various good opportunities for you to get some software up and running, so you don't have to buy a bunch of hardware for your lab, and get your study on, so you can get those certifications and keep moving on in the industry. So I would like to thank you for watching, and best of luck in getting these up and running, and best of luck in your future studying.